Hi everybody, it's David from Doctors of Running, and today we have a fun episode. I'm taking a little coffee break here, and we're going to be talking about the ASICS GlideRide 2 and the ASICS GlideRide 3. Okay, so some of the big updates that have been coming. They did do an upper change, and they also introduced a new midsole into the GlideRide 3. So when we take a look at the GlideRide 2, the full length is flight foam. However, with the ASICS GlideRide 3, the big update here is they use flight foam through the bottom portion of the midsole, and then they introduce flight foam blast on the top, which is a much softer, more responsive and bouncy foam. They do use the same guide sole technology that we saw in the GlideRide 2 and the GlideRide, with having that sharp toe spring right up front there. Nothing has changed in that realm. The geometry of this shoe and the DNA of the shoe is all the same. There is some very small changes. If you look at the midsole from the heel and the rear foot here, the flight foam blast comes up a little bit higher, forming a little bit of a bucket. The upper is a little bit more streamlined. It runs a little bit more snug and narrow. Some of the volume issues I had in the GlideRide 2 did clean up a little bit. I just did a shakeout in this one this morning, the GlideRide 3. Upper feels much more plush, a little bit more comfortable on foot. The tongues are both padded, nothing really changes there, but the lacing system does seem to lock down the shoe a little bit better. So the overall fit around the foot does seem to be improved. With that said, it's going to be a little bit more snug throughout compared to the GlideRide 2. I would still consider this to be very normal throughout, normal heel, normal midfoot, and normal forefoot as well. The shoes are plated, so that's one of the things that helped create such an intense toe spring up front. In the GlideRide 2, the ride was relatively firm. It was the foam itself, there was a lot of it, so it was forgiving enough for long runs and things like that, but the flight foam blast really softens up that landing, and I think it does clean up that transition a lot. For those that were sensitive to either the plate or the firmer foam or just that sharp of a toe spring, the transitions feel much more balanced now because of the flight foam blast introduction. The feeling, it's a little bit more suspensive when you land. There is a little bit of a heel bevel here. It's not the largest in the world, but it's good enough and it gets the job done. There's a little crash pad midline groove. Pretty consistent with the past model. Everything is very similar in that regard, but as you transition and you load through that midfoot, it doesn't feel as abrupt when you go into that sharp toe spring, and everything feels a little bit more fluid and a little bit more natural. So that's probably the biggest thing that I'm noticing right away with the GlideRide 3 versus the GlideRide 2. Ride very protective. It's just a little bit softer. The plate does still firm up the ride a little bit, but the DNA is all still there. You still have that sharp toe spring and that rolling feeling coming off of the forefoot. It's just a little bit smoother, I think, with the softer foam from the flight foam blast. And I haven't pushed the pace in it per se, but it does feel like it's a little bit more responsive too. Your legs feel a little bit more alive running in the GlideRide 3 versus the GlideRide 2. But don't worry, if you like the GlideRide 2, I think you will like the GlideRide 3. This isn't a massive overhaul by any means. They just cleaned up a couple of details. So that's our coffee break there with the GlideRide 3 and the GlideRide 2. Today we are drinking some Fancy Joe's coffee from Costco that was freshly grounded before filming this video.